to them, you need to learn what you need to learn from the Rolling Stones, which is you can't always get what you want. If you try sometimes, you get what you need.
Yeah. I think, again, that's going to be a critical issue. And again, this managed trade idea or gearing towards that is problematic in a number of different levels. But I do think it senses it expresses a frustration. And I would say there's some people that are out, no matter what, to throw up roadblocks to stop things, and when you're crafting these kind of strategies, you have to figure out who are the reconcilables and who are the non-reconcilables in some ways, but both give them cover and address the real issues that they're concerned about. And I think they are really, really concerned about historical issues, across a range of economies on NTDs. And the factor that the litigation-based system that we have now, the term always used is whack-a-mole. So if it goes from 6 months, from 2 years to 6 months instead of dispute resolution processes, but you've got to find these different things. They're not really concerned, and I think the Koreans did a great job of addressing every NTD that's out there today. They're worried about the one that's tomorrow, or if something evolves over time, and not just about the Korean agreement. Even if they trusted the Koreans, in 110% with all the great economic reforms they've made after the Asian financial crisis, it's that this would be a model for how, if you can solve this issue and resolve it, it could be a model for looking at Japan, looking at much broader agreements.
Would you ever sign an FTA as a government saying, I commit myself to non-tariff barriers I might erect next year?
Well, there are provisions that say things like that. And if you look at things like the OECD Code of Capital Movements, there's been whole different ways of ratcheting up, liberalization in ways that have succeeded completely outside of the litigation process. So I just don't think we've been creative enough about it. One way that might kind of split the difference, or at least provide some kind of cover for the people that we're talking about, the quantifiable thing, but I know this in and of itself gets resistance, is you may use some of the statistics as an indicator but not a determinant, that it would start a consultation process or something along those lines. But again, I think we need a lot more creative ways. I think we've been, in trade policy overall, stuck in these silos of where we've done it before. And I do think there's parts on the Democratic side, on ways and means and finance that are looking for ways forward. If we're willing to engage in them, it's going to be a question of how you thread the needle of what the Koreans will live with, they will live with, and I'm all for starting those negotiations as soon as possible.
Are we ruling out the VRA solution in the 1980s or 90s solution in Japan? You got a problem with the hill, we got to buy them off. The VRAs did it. I realize that philosophically they help them, but sometimes winning is better than losing.
Yeah, I wouldn't, for me personally, I wouldn't rule out anything for discussion. Again, a lot of it's going to be termed, the Koreans have to represent their national interests and the U.S. and everyone else, but, I think you've got to go in with an open mind, and drawing these hard lines right now may not be productive. But I don't know, Ed, if you have.
No, I think the problem, one of the big problems the auto industry has now is massive lack of demand for cars. I don't know the exact figures, but something like usually Americans are buying 16 or 17 million, and now it's about 10 million cars a year. So a VRA solution, when we're at half of our long-term car buying trend, and imports, I think cars are off by about half last year. I think the auto industry really does need an export-based solution rather than one that is based on regulating the U.S. market.
Bernard Gordon, University of New Hampshire. I want to put this mainly to Ed, but there's an underlying lack of agreement between the two of you, it seems to me, because I'll refer to what Ed Dresser written a few months ago. Your organization, you particularly took a position that said the Korea thing, the Colombia thing, the Panama thing, let them be passed, let them be ratified, but after this, no more. Which has been what I've been writing about as well. I'm here, maybe theoretically, logically opposed to these things because I'm in the Vanuatu camp. But let me put to both of you, your view, Steve, seems to be that these groupings are the wave of the future, or they are likely to be inevitably, so we should be getting on that band. To address it, I'm going to ask you, are you still of the view that long-term FTAs are not the way to go? That these three passed, but that the FTAs are not the way to go? Because it seems to me that's an underlying lack of agreement between what the two of you are saying.
What did you mean by these groupings?
The regional or bilateral trade agreements. By the way, to the Chamber of Commerce spokesman, it is not really accurate to draw an equivalence between free trade agreements and free trade. We've had lots of experience in free trade long before we went into this long period of free trade agreements. Okay, so try to deal with that underlying lack of agreement.
I think you may misunderstand a little, or I may not have been clear about what I do think, and somewhat of the Taiwanese camp of, if you look at, again, the reason I had that whole red world spaghetti bowl, millions of transaction costs increases because of all these different FTAs, I don't think that's the way to go. But I do agree, but I think the WTO, in some extent, is a victim of its own success. It had kind of birth defects because the ITO was cover all these other regulatory issues. So it started off as a GAF tariff agreement and then exploded and was incredibly successful. Now we have 150 countries, and you're at the lowest common denominator kind of mush that again, our Congress has said they wouldn't even sign any of the deals on the table, a couple of years ago. And I don't think they're there now. So what I think, I do think you've got, completing the ones that are out there are very important. But what I would say is we've been stuck in kind of this 90s mindset, because of the great success of the WTO. And because of this idea that it developed in the 90s that we were going to have this regional integration, we were going to have, and EU was going to grow, and then NAFTA was going to turn into the free trade area of the Americas, and then you were going to have these 5 blocks and they were going to all come together. Obviously that didn't work. You've got Brazil, so maybe waiting another 50 years before that vision happened. So what I would argue is we need a new type of agreement that uses trade, but we need to address things like currency, we need to address things like services, like labor and environment. But why don't we cut to the chase instead of this regional mindset, bring together U.S. FTA partners, Korea, others for a positive incentive and kind of reboot a new GATT or WTO for the 21st century, that then you could have a positive incentive for China to give benefits to people if you climb it. That's where I think we need to go. And I think it would fit with the administration's message and everything else. I don't think these bilateral FTAs, I was on the Hill in the administration where you're trying to twist these arms to get businesses to go out on the fronts, to support these. I think you've got to move towards a multilateral system. But I don't know why we're still thinking this regional mindset. What region are China and the United States part of? Or even the TPP. What if Brunei, Peru, and Singapore? I can take 4 nations out of a hat, and you've got as much of a regional justification as you do there. So why not cut to the ones that have the high standards, like has been successful in WTO, NATO, any of these elite organizations that have expanded? That's where I
follow up, Steve, on that.
Yeah.
So you're saying, I took your point earlier when you introduced the spaghetti bowl. You're saying emphasize the functional rather than the geographic.
Yeah, I would say whoever wants to agree to high standards, whoever wants to agree to high labor, environmental standards, services, currency, all aboard. And start that negotiation. It may be like an APEC where that pushes the WTO to do something and actually have a substantive result. Or if not, then you reboot a new system. But I don't see how we get there with the 1990s plans that keep running into a brick wall, back up, running into the same brick wall. It's like Freud said, I think the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And I don't know if we have a strategy of where we're going right now.
I guess my point of view is, as you said, we published a paper last July said that we should pass the remaining 3 FTAs and then shelve the FTA program. Our idea is a couple things. One, most of U.S. trade is with a relatively small number of partners. If you take the EU, Japan, China, Canada, Mexico, Korea, maybe Brazil, that's about 65-70% U.S. trade. And if you